last month. The boy's body was found on the compound just days later. Investigators believe he died in an exorcism ritual. The next week, a judge ordered all 5 suspects released on house arrest, sparking outrage. Child neglect charges in connection with the boy's death were dropped against 3 of the suspects Wednesday over a missed deadline by prosecutors. Days later, all 5 suspects were slapped with the firearms and conspiracy charges. They face those charges in court tomorrow. As for the child neglect charges related to the boy's death, the local district attorney says he will seek grand jury indictments. Attorneys for the suspects say they are being discriminated against because they are Black and Muslim. Rob.
All right, Alicia, thank you so much. And a Fox News alert this morning, at least 10 people shot after gunfire erupts outside of an apartment complex in San Bernardino, California. That's about 50 miles east of L.A. 3 victims said to be in extremely critical condition. At this point, nobody has been killed. All of the victims are said to be adults in this shooting. Right now, police do not have a suspect. We'll keep you posted.
The man accused of stabbing American tourists in a train station in Amsterdam will be in court today. Police say the Afghan citizen had a terrorist motive in the attack. Officers shot and hurt the suspect, who they say showed signs of extremism. It's unclear what he might be charged with. The unidentified American victims are expected to fully recover. We now know what could be behind the bizarre attacks on more than 36 U.S. diplomats in Cuba. The New York Times reports microwave weapons are the prime suspect behind the loss of hearing and other illnesses dating back to 2016 in Havana. The State Department has not confirmed the source of the attacks, and Cuba denies any involvement.
All right, the final push for votes today as the march to the midterms heads into New England. Voters in Massachusetts will decide between incumbent Charlie Baker and attorney Scott Lively in tomorrow's Republican primary for governor. On the left, Jay Gonzalez and Bob Massey will battle for the Democratic nomination, and a trio of Republicans will compete for a chance to unseat liberal Elizabeth Warren in the Senate this fall. Democrats predicting a blue wave this November as the GOP fights tooth and nail to hold on to power on the Hill. Stuart Varney, host of Varney and Company on the Fox Business Network, says the only way that'll happen is if Republicans run on their party's economic success.
They should go after the Nancy Pelosi's and the Democrats of this world, who really will cost America a fortune. But the state of the economy, in my opinion, it is the greatest story rarely told. We do have a booming economy, 4% growth, double what we had in the Obama era, plenty of jobs. We have prosperity. We're back to it. But you don't hear about it. Did you read about this in the New York Times today? Did you hear it on the evening news? No, you did not. So I have no problem with the president and the Republicans getting out there and pounding the table. Look what we've got. Prosperity. It is a feeling of dynamism and vigor. Pound the table, put out that message. But yes, by all means say, this goes away if you vote that way.
Well, the economy grew by 4.2% last quarter, and the unemployment rate fell down to 3.9%. That is an 18-year low.
Family and friends say their final goodbyes to John McCain. The late senator laid to rest during a private ceremony at the U.S. Naval Academy in Maryland.
McCain buried alongside his longtime friend and Naval Academy classmate, Admiral Chuck Larson. Senator Lindsey Graham reflecting on McCain's life after reading a eulogy at Sunday's ceremony.
Nobody loved a soldier more than John McCain. That I bear witness to his commitment to have their back. John served our country in extraordinary circumstances, was appreciated by everybody.
Well, McCain's final send-off concludes nearly a week of tributes and services, starting at the Arizona Capitol, then lying in state at the Capitol Rotunda, and a funeral service at the Washington National Cathedral.
It is 9 minutes after the hour. An MS-13 member sneaking into a little girl's bedroom and viciously attacking her. So what's it going to take for Democrats to stop, some of them anyway, defending this violent gang? Why our next guest says liberals will always put their political agenda before the safety of Americans.
Also, the shocking moment that a suspect on the run steals an ambulance to get away from the cops. Stay tuned.
Wow.
20 members of the violent street gang MS-13 just arrested in California, accused of violent crimes across the state. It is a story that's hitting close to home for Nancy Pelosi.
The President of the United States says these aren't people, these are animals. Does he not believe in the spark of divinity, the dignity and worth of every person?
Well, it's not just happening in California. The violence infiltrating communities all over the country. So is that still defensible? Her comments. Joining us now to discuss is radio talk show host El Conservador, George Rodriguez. George, thank you for coming on this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, yeah. You just heard the quote there from Nancy Pelosi in response to some of the stories that we have heard come out about MS-13. The president calls these gang members animals. What do you think of Pelosi's defense there?
Well, I think not only Pelosi, but the entire Democratic Party is really in a tailspin as to what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be defending Americans. They're supposed to be watching out for us. They lift their hands to defend the Constitution, which means the citizens of the United States, and they are exactly doing the opposite. We've seen Nancy attack and defend attack the president and defend the MS-13 and other illegal alien criminals. Time and time again, we've seen it. We've seen it recently with the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, doing the same thing. I mean, these folks are doing everything but defending the United States. Yeah, let's look at some recent headlines here, just of MS-13 that have come out of New York, where we have a big problem with this gang, especially on Long Island. Here's a Pix 11 story. That's a local station here in New York City. MS-13 gang member charged in death of teen found in shallow grave. Here's MS-13. Here's New York Post. MS-13 gang member pleads guilty to grisly quadruple murder. NBC here in New York. Teen charged in alleged MS-13 murder of boy hacked to death by a machete. I've covered these stories ad nauseum, and I've read all about what they do. They're extraordinarily violent. What do you think? I mean, in a time when I guess the Democrats are at a point where they're just going to go against everything the president says, at this point, do they alienate their base? I think they are. I think they are afraid to stand on it. I mean, recently, back in June, I believe it was, there was a vote in the House to support ICE. And as you recall, there were the vast majority of the Democrats refused to even vote. There were a few hardcore leftists that voted against against ICE, but all of them ran for cover. And this is typical because what we've got is a party, a political party that is more interested in political pandering, in political theater than it is in actually serving constituents. I have lived all my life in South Texas, and my family has been here for generations. Illegal immigration is a problem that we've always confronted. Illegal immigration, crime, and terrorism is something that we just cannot allow, and we've got to do something about it. And I would wish that the Democrats had the guts to stand and defend our nation. It was a bipartisan fight up until just a couple years ago, and then everything has changed. Sir, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We do appreciate your time. Thank you.
It is 16 minutes after the hour. Former President Obama said he'd draw a red line with Syria, but never following through.
That's a red line for us, and that there would be enormous consequences if we start seeing movement on the chemical weapons front.
How his former Secretary of State John Kerry is praising the tough stance President Trump is now taking.
And regulations saying that fishermen can be in a boat, but they can't reel in the fish on this Labor Day. What a bummer on a three-day weekend. Todd Pyre had to get answers for himself on this one, and he's here live coming up next.
Hello. Can you stand for that? Might take all day, might take all year. Catch all the fish, drink all the beer.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a bold new strategy on the campaign trail. Tell kids she's going to Washington to fight President Trump.
I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress out here, so I'm going to go to D.C. We're going to be fighting Trump.
Democratic socialist urging children in New York City to tell their families to vote for her in November so she can kick the president out of office.
There you go. All right, Harvard Law never considered Elizabeth Warren to be a Native American. The Boston Globe reports the issue was never brought up when the school hired the current senator. The Globe did find a request from Warren when she worked at the University of Pennsylvania to change her ethnicity to Native American. She even won an award listing her as a minority. The Massachusetts Democrat has been criticized over claims that she used distant Native American ties to advance her career.
As we celebrate Labor Day, one industry says they are having trouble doing work.
That's right. It's America's fishermen, and they say they're being crippled by the U.S. government. Fox and Friends correspondent Todd Pyro joins us now with this story. Hey, Todd.
Good morning, guys. How are you? It all stems from a 1976 bill called the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which created a number of regulations on the fishing industry. The House actually passed a bipartisan bill to amend some of these regulations last month, but the Senate still needs to vote on it. Here's why those in the fishing industry hope it passes.
Coming up.
Looking at hit TV shows like Deadliest Catch and Wicked Tuna, commercial fishing appears to be doing just fine. Not so, according to some fishing industry experts who fear one of the world's oldest industries could be on its way to extinction.
If the Trump administration doesn't step in to help us, I don't really see this industry continuing for another 50 years.
The cause of death? Regulations.
We are being over-regulated out of existence.
According to a 2014 study from George Mason University, there are more than 13,000 different regulations on fishermen, making it the 7th most regulated industry in the U.S. So, why so many regulations? Originally, it was meant to help American fishermen.
Back in the 70s, we had foreign fleets off our shores that substantially damaged fish stocks. The regulations came on place. You were told, okay, tighten your belt. It's going to really not be pleasant for a while, but we promise when the stocks are back, we'll let you catch them. Except they never have. I actually talked to a fisherman not that long ago who told me when he was young, they were afraid that the foreigners would put them out of business, the foreign fishing fleet. He said now he's afraid that the U.S. government will put them out of business.
Fishermen like the Williams family in Stonington, Connecticut. They worry their 4th generation of fishermen could be their last.
It scares me to death, and I tell you what, it breaks my heart. My son's grandfather was a fisherman. I learned to fish with him. My son's learned to fish with me. Now my grandson is learning to fish with with his uncles. And for all that to go away, it doesn't make sense to me.
But not knowing what your future is going to be, some people speak of a 5-year plan. We don't have a 5-month plan. They could close down one area and we're done.
Tom and Aaron fish in these waters at least 200 days a year. But they say thanks to the regulations, you can't really call it fishing anymore.
We're not fishing, we're avoiding.
That's because the government has instituted quotas on the amount of fish allowed to be caught per day. Take these black sea bass.
3 right here.
According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's 2017 stock assessment, the black sea bass in the mid-Atlantic is not overfished nor subject to overfishing. Yet boats in Connecticut can only catch 8 per day. Anything extra gets thrown back. And to make sure the quotas are kept, fishermen are watched every step of the way by the U.S. government.
I call it the ankle bracelet. No matter where this boat is, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, this is on and they know where we're at.
Why should every American care about the regulations the fishing industry has to go through?
Currently, over 90% of the seafood consumed in the United States is imported. It's imported from countries with little or no regulations or unsanitary conditions.
We're supplying a food source, an incredible food source, and we're slowly getting chipped away. And those imports are going to go up to 100% here pretty soon. We do need regulations, and it keeps everything in order. And we're not against them, but over-regulating has turned this business into the hardest thing. We're not going to be able to work much longer. And that's not just our family, it's all the other fishing families.
In response to our story, NOAA issued the following statement, quote, if you think about one fisherman catching 8 fish or whatever your state's limit is, it doesn't seem like much. But multiply that by roughly 45 million recreational angler fishing trips in the mid-Atlantic in 2016, and that is a significant number of fish. Even fisheries that are not overfished still need regulation to respond to changes in stock size and ensure they are sustainable over the long term. You know, obviously summer's winding down here. A lot of us are just, going out, get that yummy fish to put on our plates, and you don't necessarily think how it gets there,
Right.
but there's a story to be told.
Yeah, you don't think about the families who do that for a living.
Yeah, and you talk about how they have the regulations. The other countries don't face the same regulations. It's just like the Paris Climate Accord. Argument was like, why do we have to go by these standards, and then India and China can burn everything they want?
We have to be the Boy Scouts of the world, and it's tough for our people.
Yeah, it is. All right, Todd, thank you so much.
No problem.
26 minutes after the hour, 1 day out from the confirmation hearing for Supreme Court pick Brett Kavanaugh, and some Democrats already claiming that there is a cover-up here. So do they have a case? Our political panel on deck to debate that coming up next.
Former President Obama set to hit the campaign trail, but how do Democrats feel about it? Their true feelings coming up. Labor Day celebrations could be washed out with heavy rain in the southeast today. A potential tropical storm set to pound South Florida with downpours and gusty winds.
It's expected to strengthen in the Gulf of Mexico and could also cancel or delay flights. Adam Klotz is live, tracking the storm as the tropics begin to heat up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we've been waiting and waiting. It's taken a little while, but we are beginning to see a little bit more tropical activity begin to fire up across portions of the entire Atlantic. I'm going to show you a couple storms that are moving across, but the Gulf, it's just been very soggy, stretching all the way over to New Orleans, Texas, areas farther off towards the west, seeing some of this rain. They will see even more. And then, of course, we're talking about what could become Tropical Storm Gordon here in the next couple of days. That currently moving across portions of South Florida. I'm going to begin with the current storm. This is Tropical Storm Florence. This one way out to sea. It's just showing you the conveyor belt that's going to start firing up, and I do think we start to see a little bit more activity. This isn't one that's going to make landfall. The one we're more concerned with is a little bit closer to home. Still not a tropical storm just yet, just a big low pressure system there just south of Florida. This is going to be moving across South Florida. Still not a tropical storm, but bringing a lot of rain today, moving back into the Gulf of Mexico. That's when it's going to have a little bit more time to develop, strengthen a little bit. We're looking at winds getting up to 45 miles an hour. Never will this become a hurricane, but likely Tropical Storm Gordon before the day is over today, guys. So the tropics are beginning to heat up a little bit.
All right, Adam, thank you so much. Iraq's new parliament is finally set to come together today. Candidates who won seats in May elections will be sworn in, and then they'll elect a speaker, president, and prime minister, as they do there. The move is a step towards lawmakers beginning to rebuild that war-torn country following a 3-year intense battle with ISIS. Bill Clinton's former chief of staff has a very blunt message for Democrats who are looking to impeach the president.
Do you think it's wise for Democrats, if they retake the House, to start impeachment proceedings? Is it wise politically for them to do that?
No, not at all. I think.
All right, that's Leon Panetta there. He also served as former President Obama's CIA director. He also says Republicans should leave the Russia investigation alone. John Kerry speaking out on the Obama administration's failure to enforce that red line in Syria, while actually praising President Trump. Listen to this.
We paid a price for the way it played out without the red line being enforced by the bombing. I supported President Trump's response to those.
There you have it. The former Secretary of State also not ruling out a 2020 run for the White House. Kerry ran on the Democratic ticket against former President George W. Bush in 2004. The United States and Canada set to resume trade talks on Wednesday. The two nations failed to agree on a deal to update NAFTA last week. It all fell apart on Friday. President Trump has already agreed to a new trade deal with Mexico that excludes Canada at this point. The Trump administration wants to sign a new trade deal with our North American neighbors in 90 days. They're trying to get that done. Jillian.
So the confirmation battle for Supreme Court pick Brett Kavanaugh is heating up as Democrats now latch onto claims of a cover-up to try to derail tomorrow's hearing. So what is to come of this? Joining me now to debate, GOP strategist Aaron Elmore and Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Thank you both for being here this morning. Let's just dive right in and start with this tweet from Senator Chuck Schumer on Saturday, where it says, quote, "We're witnessing a Friday night document massacre. President Trump's decision to step in at the last moment and hide 100,000 pages of Judge Kavanaugh's records from the American public is not only unprecedented in the history of SCOTUS noms, it has all the makings of a cover-up." A cover-up. Chuck, what do you think? What type of cover-up are we claiming?
Well, there's a lot of Democrats that are really frustrated that they're not going to get a say-so in this Supreme Court confirmation. The Democrats aren't in control of anything. Let's be very clear to all you smart people watching on TV this morning. So the Democrats, my party, we're trying to do everything that we can to try to derail this confirmation, much like the Republicans did when President Obama had a chance to nominate somebody 10 months before an election, when the Republicans said you can't bring somebody in an election year until after the election. So they'd like to have their cake and eat it too. So Schumer's using the cover-up and the 100,000 documents that's been detected through all of the work to say that this is not right.
Erin?
If this process was any more transparent, I think we would be seeing x-rays of Judge Kavanaugh's insides. This has been unprecedented in the amount of documents that have already been released. For example, let's see, 17,000 pages. His Senate Judiciary Questionnaire has been more comprehensive than any in the history of the United States of America. So truly, we're looking at something that has been completely comprehensive. In his days on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, he authored 309 opinions, all of which are publicly available, so the American people and those in Washington in the swamp can see exactly what he has said and how he has said it. Those are all authored opinions. So truly, there's been nothing but transparency here. So I don't see what the Democrats have actually any leg to stand on here. This is nothing more than typical liberal grandstanding and fear-mongering to try to get people upset and also to undo the 2016 presidential election. And I tell you what, I like Chuck. I bet you, Chuck, let's make a friendly little wager over here. I bet you 20 push-ups that Judge Kavanaugh is going to get confirmed.
20 push-ups. Whoa.
Well, it's easy
I know
to know
he
that
likes to work out, okay? I got some
anybody who watches my Instagram knows that I'm an avid workouter, and I'll take that challenge. But look, there's no doubt that he's going to get confirmed, and it's easy to do 20 push-ups. The Democrats have no control here. That's why you have us tweeting out on a Friday night.
But so, Chuck,
Republicans control the process, so it's going to happen. We just want to inflict as much pain as possible before we get there.
But what else do Democrats want to see? What else do they want from this? I mean, let's go ahead and pull up some of these numbers here of the documents that have been released so far, and the numbers are actually pretty insane if you look at it. So for President Trump nominees, Judge Brett Kavanaugh has 440,000 documents that have been released anyway. Justice Neil Gorsuch, you can see 182,000. And then you look at Obama nominees, and the numbers are just drastically different. Like Justice Sonia Sotomayor, by the way, 6,350. And then George W. Bush nominees, take a look at that. Justice Samuel Alito, 2,300. I mean, what more do they want, Chuck?
I don't think it's the number of documents. I think it's the things in the documents. And I think Democrats want the public to know that this is a Supreme Court pick who thinks that the president has supreme power and that he actually wrote that he's against special counsels. Now, why would somebody want to appoint a Supreme Court justice who's against special counsels? Of course, that's why Donald Trump wants him nominated, right? So we want to make sure that the public knows that, because there's an election coming up and we want to win a lot of them.
Final word from you,
Well,
Erin.
actually, Judge Kavanaugh does believe in impeachment. It's not like he believes that President Trump or any president should be a despot. And I will say this, the very liberal-leaning ABA, American Bar Association, gave Judge Kavanaugh a unanimous rating. And this is a liberal, left-leaning organization. So guess what? Even liberals and Democrats are on the side of this nominee.
All right, I'm saying
just not this liberal.
I'm waiting to see who's doing the 20 push-ups tomorrow. Time will tell. Thanks, guys.
I bet on Erin.
I can promise you it won't be me.
I bet on you. Thanks, Jillian.
Thank you. You can do the 20 push-ups if you want.
Good try. 37 minutes after the hour, controversy over the film First Man hitting a fever pitch after a key detail is left out of the movie, the American flag.
We have serious problems.
All right, how the second man to ever walk on the moon is firing back.
Calling it quits. They say there's no crying in baseball, but apparently there is in football. The team turning in their uniforms after some crushing losses.
Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Ending a drought with water from the desert. It seems like a pipe dream, but one company says they can make it happen with help from the Trump administration.
Douglas Kennedy has more on how this plan could help quench California's thirst.
They say you can't get water from a stone, but this man says he can solve California's water crisis with water from the desert. This is the Mojave Desert, one of the driest places on Earth. How are you going to get water from here?
An enormous watershed, 1,300 square miles, approximately the size of Rhode Island.
Scott Slater heads Cadiz, a California company that owns 45,000 acres in the Mojave. He's proposing taking hundreds of trillions of gallons of desert groundwater a year and piping it over 100 miles to the populated suburbs around Los Angeles. The key to the project is this old railroad line, which runs right through Cadiz property. The problem has been it's regulated by the federal government. Slater wants to build his pipe near the line to connect to the Southern California aqueduct system. The Obama administration denied him the right-of-way access. But recently, the Trump administration reversed that decision.
We're looking at harm to our economies, we're looking at harm to our wildlife, and we're looking at harm to our communities that have built businesses around people visiting these places.
We've been through 12 court opinions, 4 judges, all of them concluding that this project is environmentally benign and will cause no harm to the environment.
Still, he has yet to convince the powers that be inside the state of California, many of whom are vowing to fight the proposal. In the Mojave, Douglas Kennedy, Fox News.
Former President Obama hitting the campaign trail, but some Democrats don't want his help. He kicks things off on Friday in Illinois, and then he'll head to California, Ohio, and Pennsylvania in the coming weeks. But some senators, like Montana's John Tester and North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp, tell The Hill that he might do more harm than good in their states. Obama is said to be focusing on getting Democrats to the polls rather than just candidate stumping.
Hillary Clinton is on the hunt for free labor. The failed 2016 presidential candidate is hiring fall interns, but the job does not come with a paycheck. The Clinton Foundation is currently accepting applicants to work from now until December. The job posting does not mention school credits or stipends. Bill and Hillary Clinton have raked in more than $240 million since leaving the White House in 2001. That is according to Forbes.
Good business. All right, Buzz Aldrin takes a swipe at the new film First Man. The legendary astronaut commenting on the director's decision to not show the planting of the American flag during the moon landing.
We have serious problems.
The 88-year-old tweeting 2 photos of the flag on the moon with the hashtag Proud to be an American. Aldrin was the second man to walk on the moon after Neil Armstrong.
Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong in First Man, and the Canadian actor defends omitting the flag, saying that it is a moment that transcends borders, even though we were in a space race with another country.
An outrageous claim from America's labor union chief.
Unfortunately, to date, the things that he's done to hurt workers outpace what he's done to help workers.
All right, our next guest, economist Peter Morici, says workers are happier since the president took office. He's going to tell us why next.
We're going to be back to Fox & Friends first in just a second. But first, we've got a big lineup on Fox & Friends in just about 11 minutes. We've got Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Mike Huckabee, Dan Bongino, Diamond and Silk. We're playing the hits on Fox & Friends for sure. Plus, you know, it's Labor Day, so we're celebrating Labor Day out on the Fox Square, formerly known as the Plaza. We're going to be grilling up some steaks and learning tips from experts that you can use at home, of course. It's Labor Day. Soak it up before you have to go back to work. And enjoy the labor market brought to you by a new administration. Folks, back to you.
And wear that seersucker.
Why not? It's the last day you can do it. I don't like rules generally, but I'm told this is the last day you can do it. So
he shaved
go for it.
and the seersucker.
I know.
Oh, man.
There's a lot of different things about Pete today.
A lot of compliance, Rob.
We'll have a story on steaks, by the way, coming up in a second. So
Absolutely.
wait for that.
All right, Google could be tracking your purchases when you're in physical stores. The online search engine is reportedly paying MasterCard millions of dollars for transaction data about whether its online advertisements lead to an in-store sale. The possible deal raising privacy concerns over how much personal data companies can take from consumers without them knowing about it.
Well, you just heard Pete mention it. We're going to be grilling up some steak later on Fox and Friends. And now you won't have to ask yourself, where's the beef on this Labor Day? Because more Americans are hungry for burgers and steaks. That's not just Pete. He's always hungry for that, by the way. With prices plummeting to some of their lowest levels in years, up a bit from last year, but trending down. Prices about 45 cents cheaper per pound than about 3 years ago. The Department of Agriculture says the growing economy and low unemployment is putting more spending money in people's pockets. Therefore, more steak on your grill.
And a cheaper steak and more money? Yeah, pig out.
Fuller bellies.
All right, the economy seeing a major boost under President Trump.
But the head of America's labor unions says the president's policies are hurting American workers. Listen to this.
To date, the things that he's done to hurt workers outpace what he's done to help workers. Overall, workers aren't doing as well. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. Democrats support working people more than Republicans have.
All right, so this Labor Day, we're taking a closer look at that claim.
And helping us crunch the numbers is former chief economist for the U.S. International Trade Commission, Peter Morici. Thank you for joining us this morning. You heard that interview. What do you make of it?
Oh, that's Trump just being Trump. He's always unhappy when there's a Republican in the White House, period. Donald Trump has done a great deal to make workers happier. And you see it in the statistics. You know, if you ask workers, are you happy? More of them are happy now than they were 2 years ago. Why? Wages are up. Taxes are down. Employers are treating them a lot better, offering better training opportunities, better career ladders, and so forth. Trump, it's just sour grapes. He's like Elizabeth Warren. There's nothing a Republican can do right. Heck, Donald Trump did a lot for him in the Mexico-U.S. trade agreement, and then he says, oh, it wasn't enough. You know, I'd like to debate Mr. Trump about that, but I doubt that he has the chutzpah to come here and do that with me.
You're wide awake today, Peter.
Well, he upsets me when he does this. You know, you can't make him happy. You just can't do anything for that guy. You know, if he asks you for $1 and you give him $2, he says, why didn't I get $3?
Okay, and by the way, we're talking about a guy named Trumka talking about
Donald
President Trump. So it all sounds the same. It might sound the same.
I know. He's the president of the AFL-CIO, and his office is on 16th Street, right near the White House, if you want to go send him a letter.
Big union guy. What are his complaints, though? I didn't get a lot of specifics out of that interview that he says that the president's hurting American workers. How does he say that's happening?
Well, he doesn't have any complaints. It was a very general comment. The reality is he has nothing to complain about. Wages are up. Training opportunities are up. Unskilled workers are doing particularly well in this economy. Folks that during the Obama years, Mr. Obama said, oh, I care so much about people at the bottom, and he basically regulated their jobs away, now are doing better. And they're getting opportunities to improve themselves. There was a great article in the Wall Street Journal this morning about how companies that are automating are no longer laying off the workers and replacing them with skilled people, but rather training them, investing heavily. For example, there's one guy that was put through a 12-month training program, and he went from making $30,000 a year to $90,000 a year. I have never seen a union program that can do that for someone. I'll give you another example. Donald Trump is pushing apprenticeship programs very hard, and I don't mean just welders. Okay? I'm talking about bank managers, where they take basically high school graduates, put them through a 2-year training program. They get paid $15 an hour. Okay, and they come out the other end, 88% of them are making $60,000 a year after 2 years of training. $60,000 a year is higher than the average salary of a new college graduate. I have never seen a union training program that delivers those kinds of results. Mr. Trumka, come to me. I'll show you how it's done. You know something? Union membership is way down. Less than 8% of private sector workers join a union. Mr. Trumka's problem is that he's not relevant.
You are fired up today.
Really, he's not relevant. I just love the way the Democrats say we got to have strong unions. We don't have democracy without strong unions. Heck, hardly anybody belongs to one except government workers, where they water their flowers every day, put their feet up, look out windows and say, how can I keep ordinary people from getting a job? Look at the fisheries industry you just covered.
Because you're so fired up and just went on a tangent, we had to lose the second topic. You are really, really steamed about this morning, but we thank you for your time.
He has no business saying something as stupid as that. I'm just using union
we
language.
We got to get to a regular segment here, Peter.
In a blue-collar neighborhood.
I need to figure out.
Thank you for getting up very early on Labor Day. We do appreciate it.
What are you putting in your coffee, by the way? That energy.
Mr. Trump is what you're putting in my coffee. He's a very agitating person.
Peter, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll have you back very soon.
So how about this? A man steals an ambulance, leading police on a wild chase, and the whole thing is caught on camera. You got to stay tuned.
And the NFL season kicking off this week. I can't believe it, but Super Bowl 52 still a fresh loss in the minds of Patriots fans. How Dunkin' Donuts just rubbed it in. I do see that.
The Eagles won.
Is that an eagle there?
Yeah, it is.
What city is that from?
Philadelphia.
Is that where you're from?
Oh, it is.
I never knew that. Stay tuned.
Good morning to you and welcome back. A teen rescued from a suspected Muslim extremist compound says he was being trained to commit jihad.
Alicia Acuna is live in Los Angeles with more on the stunning revelations as these suspects prepare to face a judge. Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Jillian. And that 13-year-old boy tells investigators one of the suspects on the New Mexico compound was grooming him to carry out attacks on non-believers. Court documents show 40-year-old Siraj Wahaj wanted to create an army out of the 11 kids living on the filthy site, teaching them to carry out mass shootings. Wahaj is the father of a 3-year-old boy found dead in a tunnel there. The teen says Wahaj taught him and his brother hand-to-hand combat and how to quickly reload guns. Wahaj and 4 other suspects remain in custody after the FBI hit them with firearms and conspiracy charges Friday. This all began when the 3-year-old's disappearance led investigators to raid the compound last month. The boy's body was found on the compound just days later, as investigators believe he died in an exorcism ritual. The next week, a judge ordered all 5 suspects released on house arrest, sparking outrage. Child neglect charges in connection with the boy's death were dropped against 3 of the suspects Wednesday over a missed deadline by prosecutors. Days later, all 5 suspects were slapped with the firearms and conspiracy charges. They face those charges in court tomorrow. As for the child neglect charges related to the boy's death, the local district attorney says he will seek grand jury indictments. Attorneys for the suspects say they are being discriminated against because they are black and Muslim. Rob, Jillian.
Alicia, thank you very much. A massive fire tears through Brazil's National Museum overnight, burning priceless artifacts. At least 20 million historical items are held in the museum in Rio de Janeiro. According to Brazil's president, the losses are too great to be counted right now. Authorities don't think anyone was hurt. It's unclear how that fire started. An MS-13 gang member is killed after he's exposed as a police informant. Carlos Benitez Hernandez and 4 others now facing charges for hacking Carlos Rivas Mayano with a machete last year. His body was just found in a shallow grave on Long Island, New York. Benitez Hernandez is in the U.S. illegally and was out on parole at the time of the murder. He has pleaded not guilty. Israel is praising the U.S. for cutting funding for Palestinian refugees. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu supporting the Trump administration's decision to suspend $350 million to the United Nations Relief and Works Aid Agency. The U.S. says it's no longer willing to shoulder a disproportionate share of costs to support the agency. The state's also suspending $300 million in military aid to Pakistan for not doing enough to root out terrorists. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will visit Pakistan on Wednesday. President Trump praising Tiger Woods after the golf legend defended him during an interview.
He's the president of the United States, and you have to respect the office. And no matter who's in the office, you may dislike personality or the politics, but we all must respect the office.
President Trump tweeting in part, quote, Tiger Woods showed great class in the way he answered the question about the office of the presidency and me. Now they say the so-called left is angry at him. The fact is that African-American unemployment is now the lowest in the history of our country. The Democrats have been all talk and no action. My administration has already produced like no other, and everyone sees it. Rob.
All right, a new report in the New York Times revealing the details of the DOJ's efforts under President Obama to dig up dirt on President Trump. by working with a Russian oligarch. All this leading up to the 2016 election. The key players in this article and in that effort, Bruce Ohr and Christopher Steele. Familiar names at this point. It's an interesting headline considering the nonstop coverage of the still unfounded potential collusion with the Russians by the Trump campaign from 2 years ago. Still so many allegations of that. Joining me now to debate this, Independent Women's Forum senior policy analyst Patrice Lee Onwuka and Democratic strategist Robin Biro. Guys, thanks for coming on this Labor Day. Patrice, we're going to start with you this morning. What did you make of the article? And I guess my question would be, everybody talks about collusion with the Russians. Here's, the Democratic Party funding a dossier that used Russian information to get dirt on the president. And then now you have this. What's your response?
I thought the article was very interesting in that, we're seeing the dirty side of counterintelligence, right? The U.S. government trying to flip an oligarch. But at the end of the day, the original question still remains, was there collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government? And that has not been demonstrated. There's no evidence so far. And what's interesting is the very person they were trying to flip, this Russian oligarch, laughed. He called it preposterous that Paul Manafort and the Trump campaign was actually working with them. And the investigators were not willing to actually sit down and talk with him further about it. So that tells you a little bit about, the motivations behind some of these government officials who were trying to find some sort of evidence of collusion.
Right. Robin, your response.
I don't like that this happened when it did. I would have preferred that the DOJ handle this themselves rather than this happen during the Obama administration. But I think that they were trying to protect in good faith, our democratic process of elections. That's important. So I'm glad that they were doing that. There are two very different things here between allegations of Donald Trump colluding with the Russians to swing an election and then trying to get evidence of a crime. So I personally, I just need more information, but I do have my concerns, Rob.
Robin, I mean, do you see, the irony here is all of this hubbub about this potential Russia collusion, if I can talk this morning, but you have this dossier that's funded by Democrats, which is using information from people in Russia. And they're talking about things like the president with prostitutes and things that are just very, very damaging.
Salacious things.
Yeah, very salacious and very political things. It's like, isn't that the same thing that there was? If he's meeting in Trump Tower with a Russian trying to get dirt on Hillary Clinton, I don't see the difference, I guess, is the point.
Yeah. And, there were parts of the dossier that rang true, but there were parts that were just ridiculous and very salacious, and there's no way that we're going to be able to prove those. And as far as what we know from the FBI never gives us information on what information or evidence they've got, so we just don't know yet. But the whole Steele dossier just reeks of something wrong to me. It never has set right with me to begin with, and I'm just calling a spade a spade.
Okay, that's interesting. Patrice, over to you. Does this show that, I guess, somebody is probably a bit insecure at this point? Either somebody close to Christopher Steele or Bruce Ohr likely is the one that leaked this story out, that they were trying to make it look better, that they had been working with this Russian oligarch for a couple years. They were trying to flip him for information. Does this show that there's something that they're trying to cover up, or they're trying to prove themselves?
Well, maybe, but let's not forget that we heard about this story maybe a couple of months ago, maybe back in April, where we were learning just how much the DOJ was relying on Russian oligarchs to try to get information. Yeah. So again, that the New York Times is coming out with this whole long piece is really trying to be damaging to the Trump campaign, maybe, or to the Trump administration in general. But this is really not new information when you go back just a couple of months. What is new here is just the idea of just how high up in the FBI this entire situation went, and the fact that they continue to rely on these tactics. Now, I'm not saying that trying to flip bad guys is necessarily a bad thing. Maybe there's a way to get important information, but to suggest that there's some sort of evidence or this is the smoking gun of collusion, it still is not there. And you see a lot of legacy media outlets like the New York Times trying to run with this story because we still have yet to see anything that's been a smoking gun.
For like 18 months now. Robin, the last word.
Hey, I just want this investigation to come to its logical conclusion. I hope it comes swiftly, and I don't want it to have any effect on the midterm elections because that would be unfair to Americans.
Yeah, we'll see if it does. All right, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A Fox News alert, another deadly Labor Day in Chicago for the second year in a row, and it's not over yet. The new numbers from the Windy City.
And parents less willing to pay for college. So is it too expensive, or are they not seeing the same value that it once had? Our next guest, a financial expert, says there's just that these parents are more realistic about the cost. She's live next with how to get the best bang for your buck. Stay tuned.